Today I'll show how I prep this garden bed for summer. I view this bed as a mini food forest of cold hardy perennials and self-sowing annuals and biennials. All of the plants you see here survive the entire winter in our hoop house. Now some are going to seed, but others will continue to produce harvest through the summer. Today's prep will focus on providing better growing conditions for plants that will continue through summer, while also guiding the next crop of self-sown plants. I'll chop and drop or top off plants that I don't want to self-sow, and I'll also provide support for plants that are toppling over. This quick and easy intervention will increase growing space and reduce shading for our summer crops, and will help determine which volunteer plants emerge to be part of our fall and winter garden. And returning plant residues to the soil will nourish the soil food web and promote the growth of future plants. It'll also make it a lot easier to make my way through this bed. Let's get started by selectively chopping and dropping mustard greens. Mustard greens are one of the most prolific self-sowing crops we grow. In fact, they're so prolific that they can take over the garden if we let them. So to promote a balance with other crops, I chop and drop some of the smaller plants while letting larger, healthier plants continue to set seed. I also favor giant red mustards over green mustards in selecting which plants to keep and which ones to chop and drop. Though the seeds probably aren't viable yet, I collect them in a bucket and will add them to the compost pile to ensure they don't sprout in this bed. Next, I'll selectively chop and drop kale and Georgia collards. In my experience, these crops don't self-sow as well as some others, so I want to let a lot of these seeds drop. However, they're taking up so much space that I want to chop and drop some to give our summer crops more room and more sun. When I chop and drop the kale and collards, I keep the seeds in the bed. I'd be more than happy if some of these seeds are viable and we have more of these plants in the fall garden than we usually do. This is starting to look like a lot of organic matter accumulating in the beds, but it will decompose surprisingly quickly. As with mustard greens, I'll let the remaining kale and collards continue to set seed, and after the seeds drop, I'll chop and drop the plants. I thought I'd try something a little different this year with our claytonia. We usually let all the seeds drop in our winter garden bed, which is protected during winter. This year I thought I'd chop some of the plants and drop them in an unprotected area of the garden. Because these plants are about to drop seed, this should result in an early harvest here in the hoop house and a later harvest in the unprotected area. We have so much claytonia in the hoop house this year that I think it makes sense to remove some of the seeds so that claytonia doesn't take over the whole area. I trim some of the plants along the edge of the bed and drop them in another area of the garden. This should be a good location for the claytonia to grow next spring in the understory of some of our perennials. Next, I'll top off all of our red vein sorrel plants. It's a perennial and a very prolific self-sower. We already have more plants than we need, so I'll top them all off and harvest the leaves to keep them from spreading more. We love our red vein sorrel because it produces spring, summer, fall, and most of the winter under protection. But it's so prolific that we need to intervene to give some of our other favorites like kale, spinach, and parsley a fighting chance. So I top off all of the plants, thereby removing the seeds before they have a chance to drop. Now let's take a look at a number of crops that I won't chop and drop at all today because I want to grow more of them in our fall and winter garden, and I want all of their seeds to mature and drop directly into this bed. Parsley is a biennial that self-sows very well, but we didn't have nearly as much as we wanted last fall or this spring, so I'm letting all of it go to seed. The same goes for tatsoi, a good self-sower, but we want more. We've never had much luck with spinach self-sowing, so we're letting it all go to seed. Finally, this is the first time our Swiss chard has survived the winter and produced seeds, so we're going to let all of the seeds drop to see how well it self-sows. Now that I've finished chopping and dropping and topping off plants that I don't want to self-sow, I'll tie off the remaining plants that need support. I'll also top off some of the tall, lanky tree collards, and this will help encourage lateral growth in the plants so that they'll bush out. Using garden tape and twine, I tie off all plants that need support to the pipes of the low tunnels or hoop house. Some of these plants were smothering and shading others, so this will help all plants thrive. This tree collard was so shaded that it grew spindly branches that fell into the pathway. I removed some branches entirely and pruned back others to encourage the plant to grow new, thicker branches. Now that today's prep work is complete, the crops that will continue through summer will get a lot more sun and will have more room to grow. I'll also have a lot easier time harvesting crops and making my way around this bed. Some of the plants that will continue producing through summer are tree collards, chives, red vein sorrel, Egyptian walking onions, dandelions, and lovage. The great thing about this approach is that all I have to do to plant this bed for the fall is let selected annuals and biennials go to seed, drop their seeds in place, and then I chop and drop them. All I have to do between now and the fall is chop and drop the rest of the plants after they drop their seeds. And I'll also keep the bed well watered in late summer to create conditions favorable for new seedlings to emerge. Next Thursday, I hope to release a video that answers questions I'm frequently asked about this approach. Those questions have to do with slugs and snails, crop rotation, cross-pollination, and disease issues. When that video is available, there'll be a link right here. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more videos on how to grow a lot of food on little land without spending much money or working harder than you really have to.